London is not a beautiful city. Under the soot that covers its buildings is a teeming mass of 4 million souls trying to survive, mostly off of each other. You see it in the paper every day. Thankfully, we have the London Times to keep us informed of all these troubling activities with an unbiased eye and razor-sharp accuracy. We find this publication to be of invaluable assistance in our investigations, and I'm sure you will as well. Among the forces of evil which run rampant in this city, there are also, thankfully, two groups of individuals who will aid us in our cause. As we do, they attempt to right wrongs and restore harmony and civility to the streets of London. The first of these groups is a ragtag association of young ruffians. I call them the Baker Street Irregulars. Don't let them fool you. They may be scruffy and ill-bred, but they are on the right side of the law. They can go everywhere, see everything, and overhear everyone. They are my eyes and ears in the streets of London, unquestionably a tremendous asset in our work. They will help us in our investigations if they can. The other group is a far more civilized collection of gentlemen and institutions. I call them the Baker Street Regulars. They, too, will be extremely useful in our work. At the start of any investigation, do keep in mind that it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Unwittingly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. The people and places to whom I will now introduce you will help us to collect the facts. May we use them wisely. Come, the game's afoot.
What rubbish! What balderdash!
You must have read something terribly disturbing, Watson, for you to be so overwrought this early in the morning.
Indeed, Holmes. It's irresponsible of the Times to play upon people's superstitions.
Ah, you must be referring to the affair of the mummy's curse.
Has the entire city in an uproar. 3 men dead, and they expect us to believe that a 4,000-year-old mummy was the murderer. I'm surprised you haven't taken some interest in this case, Holmes.
To the contrary, my dear Watson. I have made some inquiries, because I dare say I do believe this murderer is a much younger chap.
It's quite amusing, all this hoopla over a mummy's curse, I must say. Not so amusing, of course, the murder of 3 Englishmen.
Have any of your reporters uncovered anything new?
Actually, I've been in Paris the past several weeks. Just returned to London on Tuesday. I've had no involvement with the writing of any of these articles. I believe they are all the work of Philip Travis. He's one of our young reporters. For a short time, he was the Egyptian correspondent.
Was he sacked?
No. He returned to London just a few days ago. I gather he was reassigned to cover the case from here because he had some familiarity with a murder in Egypt.
Do you know Travis?
No, never actually met the chap, although I hear he's a bit of an odd duck.
Thanks for your help, Henry.
Anytime. Let me know when you catch the mummy. That's one scoop I'd like to get.
Such a tragedy. Fine men all, and such outstanding scholars. I still can't quite get over the shock of it.
We understand.
Professor, we're looking for background information on these 3 men so that we can understand how their murders might tie together.
Well, let me begin with Dr. Turnbull. Ebenezer Turnbull was responsible for organizing the Carteret expedition. Quite a remarkable man, really. This was the first time he teamed up with James Windibank. Professor Windibank was one of our most popular lecturers. In fact, several of his former students were also eager to accompany him. I recall him saying that he was having difficulty choosing. Weatherby turned out to be the lucky one. Though it seems far from it now, doesn't it? I suppose Smith and Travis turned out to be the lucky ones after all.
Smith and Travis?
Peter Smith accepted the invitation to join another expedition. As for Philip Travis, he was quite keen on accompanying Professor Windibank. In fact, he became exceedingly upset when Andrew Weatherby, a postgraduate student in the department, was chosen instead. Took it rather personally, I should say.
I'm very sorry to intrude on you in your moment of grief.
Oh, that's quite all right. You know, Andrew and I hadn't been married very long.
Long enough to know if he had any enemies?
Oh, Andrew was so unassuming. Everyone liked him.
Including Mr. Urubaru?
I really loved my husband.
I'm sure you did. Oh, English toffee. My favorite.
Would you like one?
Please.
Sorry, you'll have to open this yourself. I've never been any good with these things.
Queen's Court now stands in order. Mr. Holmes, I understand you've been looking into the mummy murders.
Yes, my lord.
Tell me then, who was Ebenezer Turnbull's murderer? And what makes you so certain? What was Travis' motive for killing Turnbull? And what of Andrew Weatherby? Who murdered him? So, you say Travis killed Turnbull and Weatherby?
Yes, I believe he did, my lord.
But what was his motive to kill Weatherby, Mr. Holmes? Revenge, the oldest motive in the book. Now, Mr. Holmes, who killed James Windibank? This Travis seems to be quite a busy fellow. What made him kill James Windibank? That is extraordinary sleuthing. Why, I do believe you may have matched Mr. Sherlock Holmes' solution. A remarkable feat indeed.
Absolutely perfect. I'm quite sure we could not have done any better.
Well, Watson, I believe this case is solved. And for your information, it was not the mummy.
Come, Holmes. I never thought for a moment it was the mummy.
Of course not, Watson. However, the murderer and the mummy did have one thing in common.
What's that?
They both were the only ones present at the time of the murders, except, of course, the victims.
You state the obvious, Holmes.
Ah, but it is seeing the obvious that is important. First, I saw no reason to assume that we were dealing with more than one murderer. Secondly, the locations of the murders limited the number of suspects.
Limited them? The first murder was in Egypt, the second on ship in the middle of the sea, and the third in London. You call the entire populations of London and Egypt a limited number of suspects?
No, Watson. We had to find someone who was in Egypt for the first murder, on the ship for the second, and in London for the third.
Oh, but of course.
According to the newspapers, the Eastern Empress was in Bombay at the time of Ebenezer Turnbull's murder, so that eliminated the ship's crew as suspects. Thus, I needed the list of passengers who boarded the ship at Cairo. It was our visit to Jardine, Mason and Company that provided our first critical clue. From it, I learned that Philip Travis was a passenger. I then learned that Travis was the chap who reported on the first murder. He became one suspect, but I had no motive. Clarissa Weatherby, who was also at the scene of the murder in Cairo, was another possible suspect, since she appears to have had a bit of a dalliance with Mr. Uruburu there on the high seas. So I had found her motive for the murder of Weatherby, but not a motive for the murder of the others.
Then whom did you eliminate?
Mrs. Weatherby. Her hands were not strong enough even to open a jar of English toffee, let alone strangle a grown man.
And what of Travis's motive?
It seems that Travis was a student in the Egyptology department at London University and had studied under James Windibank. He wanted very badly to be chosen as a member of the expedition, but Windibank turned him down. Instead, Weatherby was chosen and Travis was furious. So there you have the motive for two of the murders.
And what of his motive for the murder of Turnbull?
Evidently, Travis had written a vicious article questioning Dr. Turnbull's credentials to lead the expedition. Turnbull's response was quite harsh, probably powerful enough to drive an odd duck like Travis to murder.
Very impressive, Holmes.
Elementary, my dear Watson.